fact, well, I guess I should say to everyone, welcome to the second annual virtual Fungus Fair lecture series, accompanied by the non-virtual Fungus Fair forays out in the woods. Hopefully we'll be having a foray this weekend. I'll be talking to you and Christian and a few others offline later, Phil.
Yeah, I actually may be available for that on Saturday because
okay.
My other event in Carmel is in jeopardy.
Yeah, well, we'll have to discuss what secret event we want to go to. I have something lined up for Sunday, although it could get canceled out if the weather is too bad. So we need a Saturday location and a backup Sunday location. I have some ideas.
Okay.
Nothing exciting, but yeah, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Santa Cruz Fungus Federation, our big annual event is a mushroom fair in the London Nelson Center in Santa Cruz, usually held the second weekend in January. And since the COVID pandemic has started, we just haven't, well, 1 year we did nothing. The second year, we decided that there was too much COVID around. And this year we sort of decided that we weren't quite organized enough to get everything in line to even try the event. So we're doing a series of outdoor and virtual events. And for those of you who are here probably know about all the events because you've probably seen this on the website. But I guess we should get on to the talk. Lauren, are you still there? Oh, maybe she disappeared.
I'm here.
Yeah, how would you like to do the introduction for Jack? I'm not sure Christian's internet is working, or I haven't heard from him. So
okay.
We're recording, we're live, so take it away.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Jack Johnson is a mycologist based in Bellingham, Washington, where I also live. And he is on the board of the Northwest Mushroomers, I think the new president, and has got a degree at Western Washington University in cellular and molecular biology, and has since then really dived into the world of outdoor and field mycology, and has volunteered with the Fungal Diversity Survey and spends a lot of time teaching groups like this on all different topics within mycology and microscopy, and he's super passionate about community science.
And I am here, Dan.
Oh, you are there.
Yeah. And thank you to Lauren for introducing Jack. But I just wanted to add that when I was up in Bellingham and I was visiting both Lauren and Buck and Jack and everyone up there, I got to have some conversations with Jack that just cemented in my head that he's thinking about things that no one else thinks about that I talk to, and that I'm very happy to have a resource to ask when I have questions about weird microbial things and systems ecology things. And I can't wait to see sort of where Jack goes with that sort of line of pursuit about fungi. So thank you, Lauren, for doing that. And I look forward to hearing this.
Thank you both. That's very kind. Yeah, I wondered where I'll end up too. I am going to share advanced sharing. Okay. See how this goes. Great. Can y'all see this?
Yes.
Okay, let's get to the top. From beginning. Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Jack. I'm like you guys, I'm a person who loves fungus and being outside and engaging with the natural world. This talk is one that I was really excited to give because, you know, when you get into mycology, there's a point for most people I've talked to where you just start noticing mushrooms everywhere. And it's really eye-opening. They've been there, and the more you know to look, the more you see them. And with inside mycology, there's still that to be discovered again when you find out about these cryptic niches that you can look out for, and it's just really fun. So lots of cool things to share. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get rolling. Unusual fungi and where to find them. First, it's good to emphasize that just because a lot of the things I'm going to share with you are overlooked, we don't see them very often, it does not mean they're uncommon. A lot of these are things you'll see all the time, and I'll wrap that up again and speak to that at the end. You know, even though they might be quite small, they are not necessarily small in their role in the environment. I know of one study by Tom Bruns that showed that crust fungi were the most abundant in his forests that he sampled. And it just goes to show, you know, a lot of these things that we don't observe very much are playing huge roles. And then I put a star at the bottom left of everything that you might be able to find in the Pacific Northwest. I do not have as much expertise in California. However, a lot of these, if you see that star, it serves to reason that a lot of them would also be in Northern California. It's a bit of a shame that Northern California isn't included in the traditional definition of the Pacific Northwest by stunts, the mycologist, University of Washington. But yeah, so if you see that star and you're wanting to engage with this presentation to find these cool things, jot down those names and pay attention to those ones, and you know, just enjoy the pictures of the others. So, you know, as much as this is just eye candy and brain candy to learn about all these unusual places that fungi exist, it's very impactful for ecology and our understanding of an environment. It's really important that we pay attention to these niches if we want to get a full picture of what we have and how it's changing. In a review of botanical surveys, there was a paper that looked over methods of surveying, and they said they were looking for trends of how to optimize surveying methods. And what I want you to pay attention to is that only 5 to 10% of the errors in surveying for plants were misidentification. And so these surveys they would resurvey areas that had already been surveyed. And so then they were able to see that up to 30% of the errors were actually just surveyors overlooking things. So that's 3 to 6 times more prevalent than mis-IDing things is just simply not noticing them at all. And to that point, you know, with fungi, if you go to iNaturalist and you type in Fomitopsis ochracea, so out of the Fomitopsis panicola complex in our area, so 3 species emerged out of that complex in North America, and 2 of them are things we can find in the Pacific Northwest. You guys might get Schrenckii, the other one down south. But Fomitopsis ochracea is the less common of the 2. It's a more cold-tolerant species compared to Fomitopsis mountziae, and it seems to be the one that is less found. So Fomitopsis, they're everywhere, right? And Fomitopsis ochracea, the less common one, but still abundant, has 579 observations. And now compare that to a species which is much more prevalent, we know, Heterobasidion species, the whole genus, and you only have 18 observations. And now why is that? Well, to see Heterobasidion, usually you have to bend over, look under a log. It can be a little less charismatic, but the point I think that's illustrated, you know, comparing 580 observations of a pretty, you know, somewhat common polypore, but a much more common polypore only has 18. And I think that has much to do with just, you know, you have to know to look for these things. And once you start looking, you'll see them more. So guys in the Pacific Northwest, human beings, let's get some more Heterobasidion observations on here. Yeah, and also I want to say, if anyone has questions, I can't see the chat with how I have this set up, but feel free to just interrupt. This is casual. There's not too many people, so we won't, spend a ridiculous amount of time. But just make sure, if it's a question that might spur a huge conversation, go ahead and hold on to it. But if it's a quick one, okay, yeah, on the chat. What's the name of this website? This is iNaturalist. It is the ultimate tool for naturalism and engaging with records. It's much more accessible than all of the databases for herbaria or fungaria. It's a lot of fun. Okay. So the first the first niche that I want to talk about is floral mimicry. There are fungi that mimic flowers. These get called fungal pseudoflowers, and it's pretty bizarre. This figure on the right shows that in 3 very distant groups of fungi, pseudoflowers have arisen. And in all of these groups, to my knowledge, one of the strategies that these fungal mimic or floral mimics put out is that they mimic the volatiles, the scents, the insect attractants of the flower. So not only have they evolved bright colors, but they have evolved to mimic the smells that the insects or pollinators are attracted to. And the first one that I got to see was one that grows on Xyris surinamensis. So these are called yellow-eyed grasses, but they're in their own family of poales, of grasses, not Poaceae. And this is the normal, uninfected flower. And you can see it's a flower. And at a distance, on the one on the right, if you're just walking through a field, you might not notice that this is a fungal pseudoflower. You can see on the right, at a distance, it's almost the same, but it does have a different mustardy color. And these are just vegetative structures. At the moment, we don't really know the ins and outs of their ecology. We do know that they produce volatiles in culture. In a paper that Lauren and I helped contribute data to out in Guyana, will be coming out talking about the volatiles in the field. It's pretty dang neat. Thank you for the photo compliments, Sophie. Those are Lauren's. Lauren's pictures in the field always turn out better than mine. Well, most always. So another one that we can find here in the Pacific Northwest, especially in Northern California, these photos are from Northern California, are Bochara species. I don't know too much about this. I believe this is a Brassicaceae, that is. And on these grows a rust fungus, Puccinia monoica, or monoica, however you'd say it. And in this situation, the flowers do not resemble so closely the flowers of the uninfected Bochara species, but they do produce similar volatiles, I believe, and just very fascinating to think. And again, rust fungi are usually, you'll see them on leaves, on stems, various plant structures. We have some pretty charismatic ones on our native rose buds and rose hips here. But for them to make all these leaves wrinkle together and form a little thing that at a glance does look like a flower, it's pretty remarkable. Just what a world we live in. It blows my mind every time I think about it. And so inside of these little structures are spore-bearing, or these are spore-bearing structures, and the life cycle of rusts are pretty bizarre. So these spores will germinate and land elsewhere on a different plant. And there's a lot of plants, a lot of shrubs like this will then have an alternate host that is a tree of some sort. And another fungal pseudoflower that's a little bit different are these, how do I make it go away? It's covering the names of my things. Monolinia, I believe. If there's an O or an I in there, I'm forgetting about, pardon me. So Monolinia grows on Vaccinium species. And golly, trying to make the top of my thing here go away.
Is it the bar that has like the options for
yeah. How do you do
stop sharing, and then you should be able to like drag it down, or try dragging it. And if it doesn't work, stop sharing and reshare and try to drag it.
Video panel, hide floating medium control. There we go. Okay. Monolinia. So this is one where when I gave this presentation a few months ago, it was outside, and it it just goes to show this is one that most people don't interact with. The fungus is here on the left in fruiting fully, or in affecting fully mature berries. And this is a big thing that is managed in the blueberry industry because it, destroys crops. But when I gave this presentation outside, there was a whole bunch of huckleberries, also vaccinium nearby. And I said, well, why doesn't someone here just who's feeling like moving go out and look? And they found this within a minute of looking for it. But if we had not mentioned it, the whole weekend would have gone by at this event and no one would have looked for it. So again, this is a group that mimics volatiles and changes, interestingly, the fully mature fruits to resemble the flowers by giving that bright color and mimicking the volatiles, which is a little different than the others. And so these aren't exactly fungal pseudoflowers, but they're partaking in the flower process. Anthericolous fungi, so fungi that specialize just on the anthers of plants, the pollen production propagules. And here we have Antherosporacilli, and there's tons of observations of these in Europe, but not so much in the United States. And it serves to reason they're probably here. So if you're someone who's interested in plants and has a working knowledge of how to ID plants, keep an eye out for some on this Silaverna, which used to be Trachytema. Doesn't mean too much to me. I forgot to put the common name in there, pardon me. But if you see a plant in general that has a big powdery looking anther, take some photos of it because it could be something neat. After I shared this presentation a while back, and I told people to go looking, someone found one of them, this Mycobotrium species, which grows on chickweed in California. And as far as I know it's one of the first handful of records. I couldn't find any others, but I didn't look terribly hard for the West Coast. And it just, you just expanded a species range by knowing where to look. So again, these are producing spores on the anthers, and in this example, I don't actually know the whole life cycle of where these spores end up, but that's part of the mystery with these sorts of organisms and fungi in general, is they have obscure lifestyles. And we might have a picture of that life cycle, but where these things go after they're on the anthers is a good question. So yeah, keep an eye out for these. They've been found in California. And part of that question is, are they endophytic? So there are plant-dwelling fungi that not only we're familiar, most of us, with mycorrhizal fungi that partner up in the roots to expand nutrient acquisition and retention of water. There are fungi in leaves, shoots, and roots inside the stems. And we know that a lot of these are passing through. In studies of endophytes, we see that you might get a whole bunch of species that have short-lived presence inside of a population of plants, but then there are some that you find in every single plant. And they often play roles in the immune system of the plants. And very often they're just, when we see their presence, they're deemed as, oh, that's no good, that's bad. If you see spots on a leaf, a lot of ericaceous plants will, like Solal and perhaps manzanitas, I'm not so sure, will have little spots on their leaves. And for a long time, when people were transferring around other ericaceous plants, blueberries, huckleberries, they'd see these spots and think, oh, we need to quarantine these plants. But they don't have really any strong impact on plant health. Of course, some of these are negatively on plant health, that is. And of course, some of these do have impacts that are negative on plant health. The rusts that I just showed can destroy populations of plants, but may also be playing a role to keep on that we don't know. The ecology becomes mystical really quick. And some examples of plant dwellers, this is not necessarily an endophyte, but who knows, it might be. We have learned that, Fomatopsis can be found sometimes in grasses as an endophyte. So it serves to reason we should be very conservative when saying we have anything figured out with ecology. So this might just look like a brown pile of crust, because it is. It's Hymenocete carpatica, and it grows in a very bizarre place. So that is bark there, but it's not the outside of the bark. If you peel away certain species of maple and you look on the side of the bark, you may find a crust-like fungus that lives on the inside of the bark. And this is another one where I can't find any records for North America, or for Western North America. But who's to say it's not here? Who on their day-to-day naturalism practice is looking on the inside of bark? So another one to keep an eye out for. Got a question mark down there next to the presence in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty dang neat. All of this just blows my mind. So I'm trying to hold in to later in the presentation my use of words like bonkers and astounding. It is baffling what a world we live in. This here's Salal on the left, and Phylosticta Gaultheriae, which still doesn't have its name added into iNaturalist. I should prompt the curator. It's on almost every single plant. So this is one that's now, it was thought to be a pathogen. Now they classify it as a weak pathogen, but now we also know it's an endophyte. Its specific roles aren't known as to what it does, but if I took a spot here on a leaf, seen here, and I chopped it up, and I was able to see the fungal cells traversing the tight junctions of the plant cells and then forming a little storehouse. This is where they hang out. This is their chill room, then they're exploring. This is another one. We should be at every survey list or every foray list, when you make a list of what you find when a bunch of mycology nerds go out. If there's Salal, it should be on the list, but it's not one people typically look for. And you don't think of this as a mushroom per se. It's a fungus, but the world of mycology is just a fraction mushrooms and so many more organisms that don't produce those. This is just a beautiful photo of that same organism. So on that spot, the very edge, there's a gradient of color. And I just was blown away when I got this under the microscope. And these light wavy lines are the tight junctions of the plant cells. And again, you can see the fungus moving around, going towards the center where it's producing its pycnidia. It's specialized type of asexual spores, and some melanin in there to keep itself safe from the sun. So this category, Resin-Nicholas fungi, are the sap suckers, the pitch dwellers. I was going to put a really purple one in there, but I forgot to do it. That's Lilipila. There's again so much room for discovery. If you start looking at the sap spots, you'll see the cups. And this one's Lachnolula resinaria, and it is associated mostly with the pitch, but a lot of Lachnolula you'll be able just to see on fallen sticks and debris. They're beautiful, and how they can manage to live in pitch. It's easy to just go, oh well, nobody was living there. But plants, conifers, produce their pitch with the intention of making it so volatile nothing can live on it. So you give it enough time, and whoever makes that successful jump to that habitat isn't going to have very much competition. This is a fungus you recognize as a cup, but it should be equally thought of as a black powdery mass. I guess, pardon me, Lachnolula does not have a black powdery mass, but other pitch dwellers, other sapsuckers will be cups part of the year when they're making sexual spores, and then their asexual spores will just be these black dots. And up close, they're just an absolutely chaotic scene of powdery heads producing spores and spreading around. And it seems to me that this phase of the life cycle does really well in drought. And when you are wondering about all these diverse life cycles a fungus has, it serves to reason some of them are better adapted for different climates, of course, different habitats. But this last summer, with our drought up in Washington, these spots on the any forest with a decent amount of hemlock would just have tons of this everywhere, everywhere. and they can span a couple, about a foot is the biggest ones I've seen. But yeah, Sorosopy resinae also looks like this. That's the same organism at a different stage in its life. And here you can see it closely associated with the pitch. So it's growing on dried up sap. And these are little cups where the spores are made. You can see the needle here, very small. If you live near a bunch of conifers and you've never observed a sap fungi, it's because no one told you to look. And if you have, that's beautiful, and you spend a lot of your time practicing looking closely. So the next group are myxomycete munchers, slime mold parasites. There are a few more. I only included 2 species of these. There are probably more than I know about. This one here is Polycephalomyces tomentosus on a species of Trichia. And it's not really well known. Again, their life cycles. I've been told by my friend Connor there's some skepticism as to if this is true Polycephalomyces. But that's the name we apply to it. And they make a living on slime molds that have a tough exterior shell. That part of the slime mold is called the calculus, or is that the peridium? It might be the peridium in some of them. The calculus is the base of a cone if there's a cone-shaped structure. At any rate, there's a shell, and this little creature loves hanging out in that shell. And it can also just grow inside the capillicium, which is the network of like the mesh that holds all the spores. And sometimes if you don't see Polycephalomyces tomentosus, but you're trying to ID a slime mold using your microscope, it happened to me where you can mount the slime mold and you'll see these hyphae. And certainly this is a fungus, and the most likely answer is that this is Polycephalomyces before it's made these little sticks with globby heads that produce their spores. If you want to see this one, there's a time in the fall in Pacific Northwest, probably in the winter, probably around now down where you're at in California, where you can go out and they're still uncommon, but they're there. You know, no more common than slime molds are to observe, and certainly less than that. But I have one trick that I found on accident by being a bit lazy in my naturalism process. If you take these home, take slime molds home, and they don't even have to be in like a damp, cool place. Just leave them on your desk. Take slime molds home and leave them on your desk. They won't rot. They'll stay pretty much the same forever, which is a bizarre fact about slime molds. And sometimes after a few weeks, the fruit will come out of the slime mold. So that's something to look for. Something to look for. Does anyone have any questions, or are there questions on the chat? Anything pop up?
Let me see if there's any there for you. No. Someone said
Okay.
that they never kept slime mold as pets.
That's a great thing to do. Feed it your leftover oatmeal and they'll stay alive for quite a while. This is
question.
Oh yeah.
About the that black stuff on the tree. I'm not good with names that had a form in a different color. Are those like 2 different anamorphic fruiting stages like you see with hypomyces, for instance? I mean, something analogous to that.
Yeah, so that'd be good to introduce those terms. Yes, so fungi that have dual forms get called hyphomycetes. That typically refers to when they have 2, a asexual, an anamorphic phase, and a sexual, a teleomorphic phase. This is the anamorph. So these spores are asexual, cloned, the product of mitosis spores, and these spores is the teleomorph, are the sexual spores. Yeah, a lot of unusual niches are occupied by things that have the ability to make both kinds of spores. I don't know that that's a hallmark, but the more I look at it, the more I realize, oh wow, even morels have a phase where they make asexual spores, and we know some of them, not all, to be endophytes. So yes, that's a great question. Good terms to introduce when thinking about these kinds of organisms.
And it also made a big mess of nomenclature for quite a while.
Yeah, well, the mess was, it gave us the opportunity to clean up. Yeah.
Jack, you also have a question from our friend Anne. Hi, Anne. She says, what kind of tools and devices would you recommend to take pictures of very small fungi?
This is great giving a presentation at home. Hi, Anne, because I am in my room. And when I use any DSLR camera that you have, I like this lens. It's the Laowa 25mm lens, and you can zoom in really close. So a macro lens of some sort, or the Olympus TG line of cameras can get pretty good close-up shots. You can even just use a hand lens in your iPhone to get pretty close, but photos like this, a macro lens of some good caliber, and then a focus rail. So you turn this as you take photos, and you're moving the camera slightly this way, and then you use computer programs to stitch all those together, right? Because your macro lens has a narrow depth of field at that magnification. So yeah, those are the tools I use. Luckily, if I don't have great photos of something, my friends do. Leah Benlin found this, and I just found this for the first time the other day. And does anyone have anything this reminds them of? Any fungi? You just mentioned it, Dan. This is related to hypomyces. So it's in the hypocreolins. This is just also the family of cordyceps. It's related to the lobster mushroom, and it grows on old Fuligo septica, dog puke slime mold, dog vomit slime mold, those green, yellowish blobs, sometimes whitish, that you see all around in cities, sometimes on lawns. And it forms these little purple bumps, and these are the parathecia, so sexual spores come out of here. Yeah, a real treat. Gotta love strange purple organisms. We need more of them.
Where was that picture taken?
I think she took this on the Oregon coast somewhere. I'm not positive if you guys have Nectриopsis down low in California. I know it's
in Humboldt. It's in Humboldt.
It is in Humboldt. Cool. I just found it for the first time up here in Bellingham a couple days ago, and I was on a walk with my roommate's dog, and the dog started to get real nervous because I was just staring at a tree for 5 minutes. And yeah, it's a treat. It's a real treat. So the next category is one that when I was introduced to, it just blew my mind. These are Sphagnum associates, and my friend Connor Dooley, I've used a lot of his photos in here with some varying degree of credit. I always have it, but it might be small on the bottom. Connor Dooley is my friend who really loves looking at wetlands. And I saw him on the call. Connor, are you in here? I'm not going to make you talk. I just want to know if you're in here.
He's here.
Yeah? Okay, cool. He's probably working in the lab. Yeah, so with sphagnum is, again, extreme. It's an extreme condition. If the Amazon floor is the peak of nutrients in the soil, where there's constant leaf litter and wood decaying and it's moist, sphagnum is the opposite, where the pH is so high that things can't rot. Things get locked up. And because of that, it's only colonized by some organisms. You'll see pretty much the same assemblage of plants in most of these areas. And some of those will be carnivorous plants because they seek their nutrients elsewhere. And in the case of what these sphagnum fungi are doing, that's an awesome question that I don't know. I don't really have the best guess. Some of them we know are decaying the old sphagnum, but this Hygroscopy turunda and this Cupophilus, they're types of waxy caps. Those genera are not known to be decayers. So it serves to reason, or it serves to wonder what's going on here. There's beautiful fungi you can find in the sphagnum, and I'll just ask that if you live near a bog, just be very gentle with how you engage with that ecosystem, because it's one where you can squish it up too much and it doesn't come back, and it grows very slowly. But I encourage you to engage with wetlands with respect if you have some around. Hygroscope torunda, beautiful. Right now, people are kind of trying to figure out what's the real Hygroscope torunda, and we believe it's what looks like this. Some folks find other scaly capped mushrooms in Europe that they call Hygroscope torunda, and sometimes near Sphagnum. But the caps get really dark, the scales get pretty dark, and that's a good ID feature. You have the real deal. Also, the growth on Sphagnum. And then Cuphophyllus cinerelis, which I think Christian just found for his first time a while back, is just a beautiful, smoky, bluish mushroom that you only get to see in these special habitats. And if we have a decimation of sphagnum land, of peat bogland in North America and beyond, these fungi are also, things we need to think about for conservation. Let's see, do I have more sphagnum associates? I do. Well, that one's a little more generalist. So another question to ask is, how do these things traverse from one bog to another? With plants associated with wetlands, we know that, well, they used to be able to traverse huge stretches of continuous wetlands. But now that we've broken those up, are they islands for these fungi, or do these fungi go elsewhere in an alternate part of their life cycle? We don't really know, but some other fungi that live on virtual islands that live in snowmelt have been found out. Oh, we can find Hygrophorus getzii, which is a snowmelt waxy cap. We can find it in the roots near the shore of trees. So perhaps this is the place where they come to make their to risk changing. And by that I mean this is the place they come to make sexual spores, to put out new things into the world instead of just cloning themselves. Perhaps this is their safe space to recreate and change a little bit, to procreate. Yeah.
Jack, real quick, you mentioned the pH, but it's low rather than high.
Oh, fens are high and bogs are low.
I don't know if it's that cut and dry as I thought it was, but
Okay.
it would be in the sphagnum situations. I think it's typically low. Also, you have some questions whenever you want.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that, Lauren. As that came out of my mouth, I was like, oh, well, actually, I don't know. Am I saying that wrong?
I was thinking you meant high acidity rather than high pH.
Well, you know what I meant is I meant to double check that before I made this presentation.
Do you want
Thank
the
you.
questions?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ashley O says, I have a bog garden in Southern California. Would these sphagnum fungi be present since this is not their native range, or would it have come along when it was shipped?
That's a really neat thing to think about. If you find mushrooms in there, I would want to know, does she know where it's shipped from? But I'm sure that if there is a niche to be filled, that something's going to be in there. That's a phrase that I've read somewhere that is famous, is there's no unoccupied niche. So yeah, I would reason there's something in there, whether or not you get to see the fruits. Some of them can be quite small. I'd be really curious though, and I hope you go out and look. Any other questions, Lorena? Nope.
Sorry, no.
Okay, no worries. This one, Dysonella shipperi, and I believe this belongs in a different genus, but it hasn't been moved over. The old taxonomic story of life. The organism's the same, and it looks like this on the apical bud of Sphagnum squarosum, this species of sphagnum. Sometimes you can find these tiny dots, and I told this to Connor Dooley, the steward of the bogs, the bog wizard, and he told me there's a whole bunch more of these. So, what you might think is an old insect egg or something strange, well, it might be a fungus with fungal spores, just like this. And this is an ascus, so it's an ascomycete. And it shows how small you're willing to look is kind of going to be equivocal to how many different things you'll find in an area. You can spend a lot of time not moving very far if you get interested in tiny dots on the tips of sphagnum moss. The next category are Fungicolous fungi, fungus munchers, mushroom munchers of some sorts. And of course, we have Squamanita. This haunts the dreams. It makes up the nightmares of these cystoderma species, which are interestingly in the same family as Squamanita. And yeah, so what you're seeing here, this was a mushroom on the right with a normal cap right about here, and Squamanita, the body snatcher, emerged out of it and makes its own fruit and says, I live here now. They're kind of spooky and really cool, and something that if you see, you should feel pretty lucky to engage with, because they're not something people see very often. I have not seen one, and it's a bucket list thing. It's a bucket list thing for sure. So yeah, interesting ecology. Again, I do not know where they live when they are not snatching bodies. If they're there, maybe in the mycelium or elsewhere, but not making fruits. All of these sorts of questions should put into your head that there's an even playing field for discovery when we know so little about fungal ecology. And this is a young one, immature and a little weird. Another pick of Connor Dooley, but this is on Cuernomyces mutabilis, I think. And so they have other hosts that aren't exactly as closely related, which I just wanted to illustrate with one more photo. Pretty dang neat. This is a blank slide that I forgot to delete, apparently. It's pretty nice. And then I want to zoom in here onto these Trichoglossum. So what I'm about to show you is called Gelatinopsis, and it makes a living. These are photos by Ethan Krenson, by the way. It looks like they got cropped out of the top. If you zoom on in, you'll start to see little brown bumps. And normally Trichoglossum will have teeny hairs all over it. But this covers the entire outside of the surface with these little dots. And it's named Gelatinopsis farlowii in honor of the herbaria wherein it was studied at Harvard. And as you can see, what it does is it adheres itself sometimes to the hairs, these tiny hairs of the earth tongue. And the whole dang organism's fruit body is only the size of a few spores. It's very small, and it's remarkable, and it's something that I don't think has been confirmed from the West Coast. I have a collection that looks somewhat like this from a bog in Oregon, where I found this Trichoglossum, but I haven't done the microscopy yet. This picture on the left is mine, and you can see it might be an old one where there's dots, or it might just be muck. And I'm not entirely sure yet, but it would be pretty cool if somebody, again, if you have an earth tongue pop up in your bog garden, or if you live near a wetland, and you just see these in general, the Trichoglossum, take a look and see if you can find them. So the next group are Fungicolous, but less aggressively, less in your face, I'm eating this thing. They are fungi that produce a root like a tuber-like structure called a sclerotia. And a lot of them seem to grow on blackening rustulas. This is Dendrocalibia racemosa. This is just a mind-boggling, end your day, just think about this for the rest of the week kind of fruiting that Christian found. Just glorious. Yeah. And so again, what you're seeing, we talked about alternate ways of reproducing. Up here's a normal mushroom cap, and basidio-spores of this fungus will be produced on the gills. And then you have these lateral projections, these weird little helmet-headed sticks, and those are where asexual spores are produced. So oftentimes you'll see this and it won't have the cap, and it'll just have these projections. To my knowledge, it always has the asexual spores, but only sometimes does it have the sexual spores as well. And so on a blackening Russula, if you see a black blob on the ground that's in the shape of a mushroom, it might be one of the species of Russula that turns dark black as it matures. And they're very mysterious to me. I don't really know. I have thoughts about what's going on, but I don't really know another species as to why they host these fungi. What about them? What conditions are they inviting in? A nice succession of species that allows for the right bacteria for the sclerotia to form. What conditions are making this possible, and why is it such a desirable niche? Is it hard to fill that niche, and when you get in there you stay, or it's something, it's really fun to wonder about. This is a more common one, Colibria tuberosa. There are 3 species of similar Colibria in the Pacific Northwest, and you can ID them in part by the shape of their little bean here, their sclerotia. So Colibria tuberosa has this nice little bean-shaped one, and there's others that are more appleseed shaped. And then there's one species very similar to it that grows without sclerotia at all, but it will have a long trailing stipe. And so in this instance, we don't have the asexual spores, but we have sexual spores here. We don't have the stipe asexual spores. And again, this is one you wouldn't look for unless you thought to turn over an old mushroom sometimes. And you will find things growing. I don't think this is the most common. I'll show you what I think is the most common one a couple slides from now on these black russulas. This is a very, very young Colibria growing out of the bean. So you can see out of one end of the bean, little fruits emerge. And they're quite cute and small. And these are the teeny bit I'm showing of a gill of that blackening russula. So the russula hosts the lobster mushroom, they host some other molds, and they host a slew of Sclerotia-forming fungi. Another group that they host are 2 species in the genus Astrophora. Astrophora lycopodoides is the one I'm going to show you. There's also Astrophora parasitica, which is more common in the East, but we have it out here as well. And so in this situation, they do produce asexual spores, but they produce them on the tops of the caps as sort of a powdery coating that can wipe away, blow away. And then underneath here, you don't really see gills. You see sometimes faint wrinkles, but underneath those, you do find the sexual spores. And these are something that are kind of a treat to see, and they change color quite a bit as they age. So I put in another photo to show you. They can be a little bit variable, but they always have that powder at the top. I guess unless it's rained. Lauren, would you look and see if I have any questions as I chat, pretty please? Or Dan, either of you.
That thing's cool. I just seen that for the first time. Let's see. I don't think so. TJ was like, wait, did you say they're both the same family? Cannibals? About the Squamanita.
Yeah, Cystodermella, Cystoderma are in Squamanitaceae.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing that they have their own family.
Why?
But then
I don't know.
Termites is not, right? So
I don't know if that's Physalacria. I don't know what that
who
is.
knows what family Termites is in? Somebody knows. Write it in the chat. Let us know.
Yeah, pop quiz, pop that in the chat.
That's it.
Yeah, and quite some time ago, you had a question about endophytes.
Oh
yeah.
Coming from YouTube. I'm not monitoring the YouTube so closely, but the question was, could you define what an endophyte is?
Something that lives inside of plants. So the term, it gets a little confusing because you could say that a bacteria is endophytic. It lives inside plants. In mycology, we kind of claim that term as that's ours. Endophytes are, in mycology, fungi that live inside of plants. And there will be species specificity in different parts of the plants. And some of them will be endophytes for part of their life cycle and then live somewhere else. Xylaria species often live inside the leaves of hardwoods. So when you think of a xylaria, you think of it as something that eats wood, but in reality, it spends a huge chunk maybe the majority of its life living inside the trees. If you have a drought in an area and a bunch of hardwoods really get hit hard, and you want to know who is inside their leaves, go back to that area the next season and check out the fallen sticks and debris, and you'll find things that you didn't see before. The leaf is an oasis. It's wet eternally. It's a sanctuary, but when it dries out and withers, a bunch of them will come out. In Washington, we had that happen with a species of Xylaria that was thought to be really rare. People hadn't seen this one very much. It's one that's just now being described. The provincial name is Xylaria atropictor. But after we had a huge drought, it popped up all over the state. And it took me a full season to go, I guess it must have been in leaves or inside the plant. And then, all of the maples, it seems to be where there are big leaf maples, suffered really hard. So yeah, endophytes are mysterious, and they are things that live inside of plants.
Okay.
I could have given you 5 words about that. But
Charlie says, what pressure would lead Lichen-parasitic to produce mostly chlamydia spores?
boom, that's the question that we want to ask. And the next slide's talking about that. So yeah, we'll get to that one. I think this one is one of the most underappreciated Russula associates. So on the blackening Russulas, but also possibly on other Russulas, I'm not sure, you will see these tiny cups. And sometimes there's probably a bunch of diversity that I don't know about. And this seems to be the name people use for those cups. I haven't even said it out loud, actually. Someone just gave it to me on iNet. So let's give it a go. Mirathecium inundatum. And they'll look kind of like trichoderma, the greenish color. Sometimes it'll be more silver. And they will or will not have these little projections. And you know what I'm wondering now in this moment is, are those projections asexual spores? Or are they just setae? It's probably in the description, but this one's more common. And again, very overlooked. And you could probably go through iNaturalist and just look at pictures of blackening Russula and comment, hey, make a separate observation for this. It's in your photo. This is Danny Newman's picture. He's my friend who just takes mind-boggling photos and appreciates a lot of things that others do not. So to the discussion of why this life strategy, you have your sexual spores, which are the product of sex, of meiosis, where two things recombine and give you the chance for something new. And you have your asexual chlamydia spores. And the term chlamydia spores, it's confusing. There's a lot of words for asexual spores, and they tend to just refer to where the spores are produced. So if they're produced inside of the tissues of the fungus, they're chlamydia spores. If they're produced in strands, they're conidia. And I think if they're produced on little sticks, they're pycnidia. But they're a type of clonal spores. So you're just putting out the same information. You're cloning yourself. You might have random mutation, but for the most part, you're going to be the same. And so these are the two places in the life cycle we see these colibioids, these things on the blackening Russulas use. And as I've talked about this more with this topic, this presentation, that's a question everybody asks. And I'm really glad to wonder about it because it's so in your face. It's with plants. It's so simple to be like, well, some of them reproduce asexually or clonally when a succulent loses a leaf, and then that can grow and that helps it spread. We can reason through why these things have their life cycle. But with fungi, we're really at the starting point. And, some of the guesses in conversation I've had about Asterophora and so Lycopodoides, and here are the chlamydia spores. And Lycopodoides, I think, means star-shaped or stellate, something like that. And as you can see, they're really bizarre. They'd get called nodulose. They'd get called ugly. They wouldn't get asked out to the high school dance, compared to the Basidiospores, which are normal looking that I couldn't even get a good photo of them because people aren't as excited about them. For real, when I tried to find the basidiospores, everyone documented these because they're diagnostic. They help you get to species, but everybody left out the basidiospores, which are smooth, white, and normal. So perhaps there's a variation in the mechanisms. Maybe these spores that are spiny help cling to different things, animals, spread further. Perhaps conversely, these are larger and heavier, or if they stick to a plant nearby, they stay close. And the thing about chlamydia spores is a lot of them are easily integrated into an existing fungus. So, we always talk about the fungal life cycle as spore goes somewhere and germinates, but you have to add into that picture, sometimes those spores just germinate and grow into a existing fungus. They rejuvenate the mycelium with young genetics and young cells. Perhaps the dual life strategy, this is a best guess from conversation, it helps maintain host compatibility while also allowing for adaptation. You want to be able to make sure you can still get in your blackening rustulas, but you also want to be able to change adapt to you change your immune system, a lot of variability to keep up with the times. And then the third option is it just do be like that. A lot of times people don't understand, and when people don't understand things about fungal ecology, I'll hear them say, maybe it's an accident. And maybe it is. But there's probably more reasons than accidents in evolution over time. And it's possible, though. We can't always search for explanations when things might not have them. But at this point, there's probably a good reason if it's a trend across multiple species. We just don't know. So a couple different, now stepping away from the land of Rustula lovers, a couple of different Fungicolous fungi, if you'd forgotten that's where we were in conversation. This one, so remember that rust I showed you on the Bocara species in California? Some rusts, which infect the leaves, have a fungus which infects them, Tuberculina sporosi on Puccinia cribrata. So you can't even in this picture see the rust really. It's so coated with these black melanized growths of this Tuberculina. And I really don't know much about this one, but I just love it because what it is a fungus on a plant. So the steps of the lifeception there, inception of ecology, it just keeps on going, and it's surprising. Here we have a Lichen-parasitic fungus, and there are many kinds, and a lot of them are in the tremolales. So you guys might know Tremella mesenterica, which parasitizes a crust, Pineophora. Parasitize is a word that I don't really like in this situation. We don't know enough to say that for sure. The Pineophora, the Sterium, whatever is being parasitized, it looks fine. But in this case, we do see the lichens start to give some pretty weird growth, and they don't look terribly good. This Tremella caloplacae is this tiny dot. These tiny black dots are the parasite, and they grow on the body and also the little cups of lichens in the family Teleschistaceae. There's some pretty novel molecules that get produced by lichens, and people are interested in researching those. And anytime you have parasites or things invading another, you have to take into account that the invader also has to have some pretty nifty tools and defenses to be a part of invading its host. So these Lichen-parasitic fungi are the source of a good amount of investigation. It looks like this one was named after the genus of lichens, Caloplaca, but that name may not have been the best because it also grows on a bunch of other genera. So we're moving into the world of entomopathogenic fungi. And I'll start it off with one that isn't exactly one. If there's any questions, just interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll just keep on keeping on. So I put this at the beginning of entomopathogenic fungi and at the end of Fungicolous because this Polypocladium capitatum is related to a ton. It's a relative of ton of the cordyceps. It's in the same order of cordyceps and lobster mushrooms and whatnot. But it produces its fruits out of truffles of their mushrooms, Elaphomyces in this case. So it's related to the entomopathogenic fungi, but I guess it's kind of the last of the Fungicolous fungi. If you see this in nature, you'll usually just see a stick sticking out of the ground about this tall, and you'll think, if you don't know about Polypocladium, you go, that's a weird stalked puffball. And then maybe you'll take a photo of it and walk away, and then if you're the person having this happen right now, I feel you. Then you learn, oh my gosh, underneath it was a truffle. And if you see this now, get your fingers out and dig around. This is a pretty sturdy thing to excavate. It's not as easy to break as a lot of cordyceps. And it exists all over the country. There's a few species that I know of, and I think one that might be undescribed. So pay attention to the colors and how bumpy the cap is and whatnot. I guess all of them get bumpy when they're mature, but some of them are more blue and black. Yeah, and these are grown on deer mushrooms or deer truffles, not Pluteus, but deer eat these. So I think of them as deer truffles. The Elaphomyces is really high in minerals and things that the deer can't get easily, so they eat them. Beauveria bassiana. I put this one at the beginning because it has something in common with another category we already covered. So it is an entomopath. It grows out of the joints of all sorts of different fungi. And if we could just take a minute, look at this picture. I would love to know how long Connor spent taking apart this log to get this. That's just absurd. And it has a diverse array of hosts. Beauveria will be seen on ants, not as common on ants as it is on beetles. You'll see it a lot on different beetles. And I put it in the front as well because it is also an endophyte. So this is an example of a cryptic organism being discovered to be more cryptic. If you sample leaves in hardwood trees in the Southeast and in the Caribbean, probably elsewhere, but that's where I know it's been studied, you can find Beauveria will be inside the leaves as an endophyte. And I love when you can start to piece together an ecological story. In this case, this fungus, which has such a specific niche, strikes a deal with plants. And it says, all right, well, give me a home. And if a beetle comes along and starts boring into you, I'll bore into him every once in a while. And a lot of trade-offs like that must be going on. And it's cool to get a window into some of them. Another entomopathogenic fungus. This one is one that I know you can find in the Pacific Northwest. I would stand reason it's on your carpenter ants down in the California Bay Area, at least. And it's very small. You won't see it. My professor up here, Fred Rhodes, says it's something you'll never see if you try to find it. And you probably won't know what it is if you just are looking at something else and you see it. It's very small and hard to find. But as you can see, it grows out of the ants and produces spores out of the head here. So this is where the sexual spores are produced. And I really just love to wonder about the life cycles of these things, but keep an eye out for this cordyceps as well as some others in our area. That you'll find ones like Gibellula. So cordyceps is both a genus, but a common name. So if the genus here is Gibellula, it's fine to call it a cordyceps, but just know you're using that in the, the cultural sense, the group of insect parasites. And as you can see, it takes its dinner from the bodies of these little spiders. And if you're walking around in the woods where there are salal, ferns, whatever it may be, flip over the leaves, flip over the ferns, and you'll find these. At the last mushroom show I helped ID at, I heard a little girl yell, "Spider!" At one of our ID tables. There was a fern in the display. And so I thought, well, I wonder if there's a Gibellula. And sure enough, we went over and found it. These can be pretty abundant, and they're absolutely overlooked. In some days, you'll just find dozens of them. Not me, though. I just don't seem to find them as much as my friends. But that's all right. Find other things. Yeah, and they have a variety of shapes, and they're something that you can just keep appreciating because every time you see them, they look different. Asexual spores produced on little clumps here. Yeah, Gibellula, beautiful. So Terubiella, I should have changed the name of this. So Terubiella is the name for the asexual form of Gibellula. If I've got that story straight, finally. And it grows on tropical spiders. I guess this one does. This species grows on spiders we found in the tropics, and this is a huge spider. You can't tell from here, but this is a hold it in your hand kind of spider. And as we're walking down the trail, we're with a bunch of herpetologists, Lauren and I, and our friend Luca, and it felt like like when you're a tourist and you freak out over their buildings in the city that everyone walks by. We all stopped and lost our minds at this fungus covering the spider, and they all went, oh yeah, I mean, totally, you see those around. Yeah. If you go back in the woods in a week, it'll still be here, they said. So these things last for quite a while. In this picture, I think I captured that the fungus inside the spider caused it to molt, which is pretty neat. You can see the molt casing right there. And this is another one that just infected the body to make it look very awkward. Yeah, interesting. Terubiella, which is a synonym of Gibellula. This is another cordyceps you can find on the woolly bears, these caterpillars, and you can actually find it at all phases of the woolly bear's life. And that's why I put this one in here, just to illustrate, you can start to learn the niches and then piece together the life cycles of these things. These were found in the same day. And you can see on the pupa here, these stalks forming out. This picture is a little, it could make someone gag maybe, but it's cool to see it on both parts of the life cycle. And does anything grow on the cordyceps, you ask? Yep. Yeah, there are fungi that parasitize the parasites. So this, what you're seeing here, before, let's see, did I put a picture of it? No, I didn't. Before this white powdery mass grew, there was a cordyceps that looked like the ant one, just a simple stick and a ball on top. In some way, somehow, a hyperparasite has infected the cordyceps. This one's on a fly, and the cordyceps that was infecting the fly is in the Ophiocordyceps dipterygena species group. The group just means there's probably a bunch of things that we all call Ophiocordyceps dipterygena. And this just boggles the mind. This is now we got one more step. This is a fungus on an insect, and the insect's probably on a plant.
Connor was saying that about the Terubiella, that the spider was probably likely to be vulnerable to spores after molting, which is what I was thinking maybe too. Just
that's neat. Yeah. That's what somebody told me in the past, is that their spiders as pets are vulnerable to getting diseases after molting. So that makes sense. Perhaps it's opportunistic. These are called Hypocrella. So this is a scale insect, and you can't see, I should put a comparison photo in here. They're just like little flat discs. If you know what a chitin looks like on the seashore, they're kind of the chitins of the trees. They make their living by flatly rooting themselves to a substrate and slowly moving as they seek out food. And Hypocrella has probably, I don't know, we saw at least 6 different kinds in Guyana, just tons of different little shapes of growth. They're the orange mass engulfing the scale insect and making these sexual structures, parathecia. And I don't know if they make asexual structures. If they do, it's all caught up in this fuzz. But yeah, just another group that really blew my mind with the sheer diversity. There's some, this one always produced 4 pillars. And as easy as it is to go, well, it's probably the same as this one, there's just so many where you'll find, oh, it's always the exact same. Some will just produce 1 right in the middle. Yeah, pretty dang cool. And this is like a culture of mycelium growing. It's spreading out. Yeah, Hypocrella, not to be confused with Hypocrea, which is the sexual form of Trichoderma. Too much Latin. What we need is a committee to make common names so people can actually remember these names. On invasive lady beetles, this is the first time this has happened to me. Hesperomyces harmoniae, I believe. It's been renamed just as of like 2 weeks ago. And as I was looking this over, I forgot to change the name. These little golden strands are also in the Hypocreales, but they're not in Hypocreales. They're in the Labule-Beniales, a family group related to Hypocreales. They have a life cycle that nobody really gets, is the best way to put it. The ladybugs can have a ton of them on them, and it doesn't seem to damage them too much. We don't really understand how it gets its food. At the base of this structure, it's got a little foot, and that foot is adhered to the ladybug. But it doesn't seem to harm the ladybug very much. You do notice some slight behavior changes and changes in mortality rates if they get to this point, but they're not very significant changes, which is really puzzling. So they're like little lady beetle STDs that get passed around, and if they were an STD, they'd be one that's kind of not a life ender. These have a season in California in the spring and early summertime, and so if you see these ladybugs, lady beetles out and about in that time, try to catch a couple and see if you can see these on them. They're pretty neat.
Who asked? Charlie asked, do Hypocrella grow on white flies?
No, so Hypocrella are just specific to scale insects, to my knowledge. But I guess the other answer to that is I don't know of, I haven't looked into it, but I'm pretty sure they're just on scale insects.
Oh, Connor said yes, white flies too.
Oh, there we go.
And then Toshiro says, are these Asian ladybugs?
Yes, they are. Yeah, and this species is specific to that lady beetle. I forgot to put the epithet in because I didn't remember it and I didn't want to get my bug ID wrong. But yeah, it's this
rest stop in Kentucky. This was super cool for Jack. Yeah. There's a comment from YouTube that Dan shared from Juan. Is Volutella an overlooked one? I study morels and was Morchella species.
Oh, Volutella, the morel parasite. I've never seen that, and honestly, that's just like a name that's in my head that I'm not sure I know what it is. So I can't say, but someone in this chat does know more about it. If you want to answer that question, anyone who knows about Volutella, please do. It's cool to know that Hypocrella also grows on flies. That is what a discovery for me. Nematode-trapping fungi. A life cycle that, again, you would never expect from your oyster mushrooms, from your Hohenboehlia. When we see the fruits, we think, okay, I saw this coming out of wood. This guy eats wood. You can grow oyster mushrooms on woody material, and it's easy to think we have the ecology figured out. But if you look at their mycelium, you'll see some interesting little hoops, bubbles, different types of nematode trappers have different techniques. And this little sticky bubble, a nematode will run into it and become trapped, and the fungus will either wrap itself around it or just slowly eat it. Yeah, so when you think of oyster mushrooms and the whole family, Pleurotaceae, think of nematode eating. Every member of it has, except for one, has been shown to eat nematodes. And that one genus, I think it hasn't been shown that just because nobody's studied it. It's in Africa.
There was a question from TJ. Are they entomopathogenic primarily because they need the chitin from the exoskeletons?
That's a really neat question. I would say that's a good train of thought, but they end up eating all sorts of things. And, you know, once you break down you have to break down the chitin to turn it into your chitin, but there are pieces that could stay somewhat the same, I guess. But the train of thought is a good one because they are entomopathogens or evolved that lifestyle more likely than plants or other things because the fungi have chitin, albeit usually some different forms of chitin. And so they have enzymes to break down chitin. And they also have the ability to produce tons of interesting molecules that get used to manipulate their hosts, to invade their hosts, to suppress their hosts' immune systems. And there's lots of cool research on compounds that come out of cordyceps. So yeah, that's a good train of thought. I hadn't thought about that. I wonder now how much use they get. So chitin, the main form of chitin in fungi, isn't actually so chitin-like molecules make up a family, right? And chitin itself isn't the most common molecule in fungus. There's beta-chitosan. So if you take a group off of chitin as you chain them all together and you take an acetyl group off, you get beta-chitosan, and that's actually more abundant than chitin, but in most fungi. But so there's variability there. I can't spend too much time wondering, or I'll never let you guys get to sleep. So, nematode-trapping fungi, Orbiaceae. When you see these tiny cups, instead of thinking them as cute wood decayers, think of them as ancient metal nematode hunters, and they've been battling with nematodes for millions of years. They form these characteristic little hoops that the nematodes will swim through, and it constricts around them and catches them. So, you know, these Orbelia are little fisher cups. They are hunters. And it makes sense. There are opportunities to get nitrogen, and that's something that is not always easily accessed in decaying wood, right? So if you are living a lifestyle that has some weak saprobism, some white or bleach rot, as they call it, soft rot, pardon me, you might need nitrogen to sustain that life cycle. And this is one way to get it. There are other fungi, I can't remember the example, where they might partner with a tree as a mycorrhizal host, but then facultatively kill insects to get nitrogen for the tree. So, you know, a lot of different ways to kill bugs. But the war between nematodes and fungi has lasted much longer than, you know, humans on Earth, and will outlive us probably as long as there's life here. If this goes away, I don't know what will go on. But yeah, just a way to rethink your Orbelia when you see them. So termite-dependent fungus. So we've stepped away from the entomopaths sensu stricto, and now we're looking at entomo-associated, insect associates. Guyana-gaster necrorhizis here was found in Guyana, and it was a little bit puzzling as they found it. They couldn't quite pin down the ecology. But over years of observing it, they realized it was always present at termite mounds. And it's now thought to depend on termites to spread its spores. There are other fungi that seem to only be associated with termites in the method of spore dispersal. Yeah, so pretty dang beautiful, blood red, strange thing. It's like if you took an old dried up date or a fig and filled it with steak. It's unusual. But yeah, the interactions go on and on. There's probably more to this one than we know. Insect associates, again, there are so many fungi that just love growing on old insect nests in the tropics. This one's from Trinidad, and this is from Guyana. This is a Tarula, which is just a Tarulaceae is a family of little club-like things that have interesting places they call home. And of course, we have an earth star, Geastrum. I think this is Geastrum schweinitzii, and it's on an old mound of an ant nest. And pretty interesting if you think why this is an advantageous place to live. Well, it's kind of like pre-chewed food, right? You got all of these things that, sorry, I clicked the thing too early there. You've got all these fungi that come to a place that has been already pre-digested by all of the bacteria that are harbored by the ants and all of the chewing and enzymatic action of ants and termites themselves. Maybe this is Chimenophilum, or I can't recall the name of this one, but another cute tiny cup. These are Lauren's photos.
I was saying it's either like a Crepidotus or a Cladopilus. Are you thinking of Cadiocalathus?
No, that one's orange. Thinking of Chimenophilum candidissimum, but it's a little wavy. I don't know. It's a little mushroom growing on ants' nests.
There's a little bit of pink in the middle, so I think maybe Entomataceae. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's all right. Your inputs are welcome. Yeah, more things just popping out of ants' nests. If you ever take a trip to the tropics and you have successfully gotten acquainted with flipping over black russulas at home, branch out, flip over a bit of an old ant nest in Costa Rica or wherever you end up going if you're so lucky. And this one is a little more ambiguous. It is not clearly a symbiont, but it plays a symbiotic role indirectly. Trichoderma sulfurum is shown here, but I put many species because it's likely more than just one. This species I learned as I kind of had a Pavlovian pain response with it. Every time I saw this, I anticipated being bitten by ants. And the reason was it lives outside of ants' nest. And a study done on the effects of having this with the ants' nests showed it wards off the cordyceps that predate on the ants. So there's an interplay here that quickly gets more complex. And the trichoderma, you can see this here too. If you see in like an alder tree that's fallen or something, sometimes in the branches where they meet or in little holes in the tree in the higher up areas, you'll see trichoderma in there. And it makes you wonder why there. Was it playing a role that's with insects and other fungus like this? Oh, pardon me. I think I said it protects ants. It protects termites in this situation. And here's a termite queen that was the size of my face. Leafcutter ants, which are actually fungus farming ants. This is a niche you might have heard of already. If you haven't, I really would love to try and popularize the name fungus farming ants. And it's what they are. They cut these leaves, they bring them back to their nest, and they'll select only the best ones, and then they pre-digest it and feed it to a fungus. They then eat the fungus. And there are some leafcutter fungus farming ants that are only eating the fungus. There are some that, take it or leave it. And then there's, of course, just many more ants that don't engage with this, but we know that it's a relationship that's very, very old, 50 million years or so. And the fungus produces these starchy things called gonglydia, which is a really nice word to say, feels good in your mouth. And something that's really interesting to me is the fungus that's most commonly cultivated by these ants is in the same family as our button mushrooms. And so in the great scheme of things, ants ended up choosing the same family of mushrooms to make their main mushroom as we did. And I would say that's a plus for us because ants seem to get things, they're pretty successful. So, we should eat more than just Agaricus bisporus, but yeah, some recontextualization of that there. Birds and fungal relations. There are fungi you'll see in the tropics that just look like fuzzy little cords. We learned this as Bruniocorticium corneriifera. It may have a new name. I think it's related to marasmius. And there are marasmius that do this as well, where they'll make either big fluffy roots or big fluffy growth like this. And this is all, to be clear, this is all fungus, like the individual cords. I think this part's the stick and then these parts aren't, but I could be mistaken actually. At any rate, birds pick it and make their nests out of it. And it's never been observed to make a mushroom. It seems to only spread asexually. If it has other parts of its life cycle, we don't know. There are then instances where, like a traditional black rhizomorph, like we see with our honey mushrooms and stuff, will get picked and used as weaving materials by birds. And then sometimes you'll be lucky, if you're lucky enough, you'll see a mushroom growing out of the bird's nest. And it's a pretty closed loop, everybody wins system. I also have to wonder, because birds make nests out of lichens and mosses, which have good antimicrobial properties, if these might be playing a role in nest health as well. That'd be a study for an ornithologist and a mycologist to work on. Bird and fungal relations continued. There's a thing that grows on bird bones called Onigenia corvina. And that thing is a fungus that produces a little stalk here. And I'm not sure, actually, someone knows if these are sexual or asexual spores. But yeah, if you're lucky enough to see this one, I have not seen it yet. It can look a little different depending on where you're at. It can grow on feathers, it can grow on bones. And I really love to wonder about the origins of this. The feathers, the keratin in the feathers are made out of the same pieces as keratin in our fingernails, but it's a different arrangement. So there's like keratin A and keratin B, alpha keratin and beta keratin. And so Onia, this would not be able to break down the keratin that animals produce. And if it's been around for a while, which would be neat to know, it must have been eating feathers of old birds and back to when the birds were dinosaurs, perhaps. And that's my conjecture, or maybe even just speculation. I love to imagine this thing as fruiting in huge quantities on the feathers of T-Rexes and velociraptors. Seems likely, seems likely to me. Getting to the home stretch here, which is, it's good timing. Cladosporium, cladosporioides. This is an ascomycotan. It's in a different order, in the Dithyomycete or class, and then it's in the order Capnodiales, which there's some black powdery things you'll see on palm leaves. It's kind of a group of rejects. They're not the cool kids in ascomycotans, but they're definitely super diverse, and there's tons of types. I put this on here per Christian's recommendation, as it's been studied to be able to grow on jet fuel. And there's a lot of interesting interactions in places that we wouldn't expect when it comes to fuels and oil slicks and things. And I haven't read too much about this specific study, but oftentimes if you see organisms that are associated with fuels, they will be at a thin layer at the very top. And what happens is a bunch of organisms get together at that layer, and they make a little consortium, they party, and each one fills a different role to make sure that that niche is habitable. One will change the pH a little bit so the other one's able to keep moisture there, and naturally at the top of fuel reservoirs, it's a little easier to maintain moisture in that one spot. There are also, like at the boundary layers, some lakes have two different layers of water and different things in those lakes. And at those boundary layers, there are strange fungi that do things we couldn't imagine, living in crazy pHs and with crazy low amounts of usable nutrients. But yeah, so here's the hyphae of it, and it's branching with these conidiophores, these spore-producing structures. Aphid farmers. This could have gone back with insect parasites, but they aren't exactly parasites, like if cordyceps are hunters, Ascopolyporus, Polycrois, and a few others, malaria and malaria, not malaria, the virus. A few other genera are the farmers. And so you can't really see the interaction playing out here. And I am hard pressed to understand how someone discovered it. But my friend Danny Newman shared this with me, and he advocates enthusiasm for this species unrelentingly, which I love. What happens is the aphid is growing on bamboo here, and it's got a sucker called a stylet. Let's see, what can I use? I've got a can of tea, and it's pressed into the plant. And what the Ascopolyporus does is it eats everything but the stylet, and the stylet is still tapped into the bamboo. And then it comes in and uses the insect's straw. It steals the ability to access through the tough material into the juicy material of the bamboo. And for some reason, it grows to be these, what's that dessert people eat that's in the freezer that looks like this? Mochi. It looks like oddly colored mochi. And you can find these in the tropics, and I believe in Asia and elsewhere. What would be really cool, if anybody knows of some big bamboo gardens, is if we could find it on bamboo growing in California or anywhere in the West Coast. I would reckon it'd like somewhere warmer to fruit. Yeah, really bizarre. But, since it's not an endophyte, it's hard to wonder, or it's hard to think, and you have to wonder if it would have those extensions if we transplanted bamboo. Where is it living when it's not slurping from the straws of aphids is something to wonder. A scale insect farmer here. Boy, I've forgotten the name of this thing. So it cut off my name at the top of this. And again, this isn't one that I know too much about, but this is one that I was told about by a fellow named Nicholas Schwab. Maybe it'll come back to me. Lauren, would you Google it? And then we can tell people later. So this one, those scale insects that we saw earlier being parasitized by Hypocrella, this one provides a little shelter underneath which these scale insects are kept in a corral, basically, and sheltered from predation and from other things. It camouflages them with lichens and other things and physically gives them space to continue feeding, but then it devours them when they get old and die, which I think is kind of a fair trade. It's, sadly comparable to some ways we treat elderly. Yikes. Anyways, Lauren will get the name of this one, or she won't, and I'll remember it later. So last two I think I have here. This is Scutellinia. Don't get confused. This is just your eyelash cups. But what I'm going to show you are chytrids, chytridiomycotans that I found on their hairs. To ID these cups, you need to take a thin slice of the hairs, like a thin slice on the side with good hairs, and squish them under the microscope and try to see what the hairs look like. And so when I did that, these are the hairs way zoomed in. I found these, and I knew these to be chytrids. And so what you're looking at, just for a little explanation, is these are cells from the cup. These are the hairs way out there. These are things called paraphyses that are all around, and they're from the fungus. And then this is called an oogonium. This is a big resting sac out of which these spores pop, and these are resting spores that when conditions are right, they'll then pop out. Chytrids kind of take the cake as far as under-observed ubiquitous organisms. If you know about them, which not many people do, there was a species of chytrid that has spread around the world. It's currently going on, and is decimating frog populations. And so there's fine-tuned relationships with, frogs have a film on their skin that protects them, and that film is tuned with bacteria that relate to their chytrids in their area. And if you put a chytrid like from another region through the pet trade, it happened, and spread around the world, it might have a great success. And that's what happened with Bactrochytria. I'm not remembering my names today, but I'm not here to share Latin. I'm here to share niches, which is really much more what I'm about today. And yeah, what's interesting again is when you try to culture chytrids, one method people use is using really soft hair, human or animal hair. And it makes me wonder if it's growing with the hairs of this cup, which are made of different molecules, I think. I don't actually know, I think is the truth, but my guess is that it would be a different form of keratin, if it's keratin at all. It might be just the physical electrostatic properties that attract chytrids to hairs, but it's a pretty surprising find. You can find the species of chytrid that infects rhododendron, maybe, that you can see spots on the rhododendron. However, chytrids are everywhere. Surveys looking for them found very quickly. They're in lakes, they're in the ocean, they're in the ditch on the side of the road, they're in, acidic soils, basic soils, they're in Antarctica. They are all over. And they have a life cycle where part of the time they're resting and slurping up nutrients, and other times they swim around. But we really don't know too much about what they do. And if you get the chance, look and you see a lump, if you're someone who does microscopy of any kind, or you have friends who post pictures of microscopy, and you see a little lump that has a bunch of tiny dots in it like this, and you're okay with being wrong, you should ask, could that maybe be a chytrid? If it's big in the terms of microscopic world things, it might be pollen or something, but especially if you see microscopic pictures of pollen, they'll be coated in these.
Jack, your scale insect one is Septobasidium.
Septobasidium.
And then
nice.
the chytrid that causes the sickness is Batrachochytrium dendropatitis. Thanks, Omithra.
Yeah,
and
thanks to all of you.
also, Connor said that other genera in Onogenales are pathogens on humans.
Oh, interesting. But they're skin pathogens, I would assume, or are they fingernails? Under the fingernails. Tinea? Tinea pedis is an onogenia?
Yeah, huh?
Oh, interesting.
That's the case.
So maybe there's a group that made the switch to mammals when mammals came about, or comparing the enzymes of those two would be neat. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, it's nice to be in a community where I don't feel, I'm not worried about not remembering this. There's too much to remember. And I'm just excited about it existing. The name helps, though. Thanks, Septobasidium. Okay, last 2 slides, I think, or maybe 1. Ingoldian fungi. If you take from the streams and pools of fresh water near your house, if you take some of the foam in a little cup, which is, those pictures came from this cup and foam from a stream I put in there, and you go home and you look at it under the microscope, you will see a million crazy geometric shapes. And what those are the spores of hyphomycetes, so organisms that have dual life cycles. These are the spores of them that you find in fresh water. And some of them we have names for. We know that some of them are their sexual forms are little cups that grow on little bits of woody debris. But most of them, we don't really have any clue what's going on. And I don't. And I've tried to find out by spending a couple days learning about these things here and there. And they're just very mystical. And to me, you know, one of the most beautiful things, just like makes me so happy to be in this world. Not only can we have beautiful streams and rivers, but then if you take some of that foam home, what's the foam full of? It's full of beautiful geometric shapes. And so these come in a million different shapes and arrangements, and they're clear. Normally they're hyaline, but I put a blue dye so I could see them better. And yeah, it's as strange as it sounds. This one is a different species than this one. And there's tons and tons of described diversity, but they can germinate and grow like this one. These two branches are branches of that grew. And so they can be very difficult to ID, but they're very, very fun. And yeah, something to look for if you have a microscope at home you don't use, and cutting up mushrooms is too hard, because it is kind of hard sometimes. Take some foam, let it dry out for a few days. It was what I did and had good success, because then it kind of condenses, and dissolve it in a single drop of cotton blue, a dye, lactophenol cotton blue. And then on that slide, put a paper towel at one end and feed water into the slide from the other and suck out the excess dye, and you'll be able to see these. Yeah. So just to close up the talk, I just want to rethink obscure fungi with you a little bit. Because this presentation, when I started making, I was like, I want to talk about the weird things, the things that are doing, you know, stuff we wouldn't expect and that's so unusual. And while I did focus on very extreme niches for a lot of these, some of them are just things that we don't see very much, but are very present. And, you know, we have this centered frame with macrofungi around, or with fungi around mushroom forming fungi. And it's silly. It's just downright silly. Imagine if only, when we thought of animals, if we only thought of the big ones, and if we didn't give any attention to anything smaller than a horse. You know, 1% of fungi form mushrooms. About the same are macrofauna. About the same are plants that are parasites. And so in our efforts to understand this kingdom and engage with it, you know, the more we think about these things, the more we should recontextualize them as the backbone of ecosystems. The mushrooms that make fruits are also part of that backbone, but you know, these obscure things, they are special to find, but they are ubiquitous. And I kind of think they're like the kitchen staff of the fungal world, where they don't really get any credit, and they might not even get tips. They don't get appreciated as much by those of us engaging in naturalism or stewarding the land. While the big agarics and the fruiting mushrooms are the front staff. But yeah, that's just the last note. And again, these are, you know, the things we can observe that are spots on leaves and stuff like that. It's very impactful for our understanding of an ecosystem, you know, to pay attention to the obscure things. And it's just fun. It's really fun. So thank you for tuning in, and I can take the rest of y'all's questions if you have any.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Everybody feel free to unmute or ask questions in the chat.
Not one, not none.
There was a YouTube comment that said, "Thank you so much. This really helped bridge the gap between ectomycorrhizal and endophytic fungi, of which the latter are the more present and underrepresented." Awesome.
Hey, great. Thank you for the feedback. Where I think I might have just accidentally turned off Dan's video trying to figure out how to get back to the home screen.
Oh, that's all right. I know how to turn it back on. Anyone identify those mushrooms?
Yeah, we got those ones in your screen there. Some swillis and hypomyces, is it? Or is it a boletus? Yeah. Alrighty, thank you guys for having me present. I really appreciated it. Hope that was fun for you all.
Jack, can you see the chat?
Cannot. I don't know what's going on with
Stop
my Zoom.
screen sharing.
I do not even have the option to stop screen sharing.
Move your mouse around. You'll get your bar back. There's some more questions and stuff. A lot of
Could you
people
read
saying
them to
thank
me?
you. Yeah, hypocrella are tropical only, says Matthew? Question mark.
I don't know.
Connor, do you know? And then also, are those fungi on insects killing the organisms they inhabit, or do they appear when they're already dead?
The fungi on insects. Did you mean like the cordyceps ones? Those are predators. Like so both happen. The Septobasidion gives a home to them and then eats them when they're dead. The ones that grow on the aphids, I believe, kill the aphids as well. I'm not totally sure on that though. And then the cordyceps that we were seeing, they are absolutely munchers of insects. Phylosticta on INAT should be the Gaultheriae one should be added, but it's not on there as of now. So just look for Phylosticta.
There was some discussion about whether the cordyceps are using the chitin on the insect, and I was thinking, usually that's about the only part of the insect left. That there's often a shell there, and that would be the very last thing to disappear. And I'm not sure whether it disappears or just disappears under the fuzz.
Yeah. So perhaps not. I don't know. Someone else might have a better idea of that. Yeah, thank you for tuning in, TJ. Yeah, I mean, you want to get into a field that has a lot of room to improve, just any of these topics, pretty much. New Zealand has hypocrella as well. Okay, cool. Right on.
Okay, I guess that about wraps it up. Was there any other questions? Okay, I'll stop.
Time to search bogs and bamboo groves. Yep.